Hi, I'm Tony. Welcome to So Lounge. Today I'm going to show you how to put in an 1.25" hem. So I've been working with this wrap skirt, and if you haven't been following along, it's Simplicity 8133. I'm making version A, which is the very long wrap skirt, and I've got it pretty much all put together. The last thing I need to do is put in the hem. So I am on step 21, if you are following along. And if you want to buy this pattern, it is available in stores, so you can go out and get it and then come back and watch the videos. To get started, we are going to pull out the basting stitches that are in this front panel. And it's actually on both of the panels because this is a wrap skirt. We had basted together the sides, these front edges, and we have to go back in and finish them now because they're just basted. So first things first, we are going to pull out part of this basting thread. We do not want to pull out all of it. So let's go in for a closer look. This is a close-up of what we're getting ready to do. This is instruction number 21, and we are going to pull out the basting along this edge, unfold it, and then fold up the hem to the desired length. Now, here's the actual part of the skirt so that you can see this is what we're going to be pulling out, and we're going to take our hem gauge, generally measure about 1.25 inches, and then I'm just going to put a little mark here to make sure that we don't rip it out any further than we need to. Now we can grab our little scissors and we can just snip that basting thread and then just snip it here, and then we'll just pull it out. Can leave that end hanging because it's not really doing anything. And we are going to be unfolding this, and then we're going to press it. So you can see how it's kind of bunching up a little bit. We want to be able to unfold it so we can press that all flat. So I'm going to take out a little bit more of the basting, which is totally fine. So now we know that we have plenty of space to press and still get in that 1.25" hem. So next step is to go to the ironing board. So we're at the ironing board. My iron is set to cotton and the steam function is on. That is what is appropriate for my fabric. If you are not using cotton fabric, set your iron accordingly. You do not want to have a big old melty mess because you put the iron on the wrong setting. Now, we are going to press open this little folded flap that we just took the basting stitches out of. And I am just going to give it a quick press just to make it lie flat so that when we do fold up that hem, everything lies nice and even. And let me just double check that I pulled it out enough. Yes, and don't forget you have 2 panels we have to finish. So it's on either side of the hem, we're going to have to do this. So make sure you pulled out the basting for both of them, and we are going to press them at the same time. And that way we'll just do this all in one big step. Now, the next part of the hem is to fold it up, and we're going to fold it up 1.25 inches. This is when a Dritz Ezy Hem really comes in handy because they have 1.25 inch mark on it. If you don't have a Dritz Ezy Hem, you can just use a regular hem gauge, and you can use a pen to mark it. You can just go along the top and mark everything. Just make sure you are using a pen that does not fade with heat, because then that would defeat the whole purpose. As you're pressing, it's all going to disappear. So I'm going to take my Dritz Ezy Hem and let me figure out which side I'm going to start on. Okay, so I'm going to keep the right side down, and so I am starting on this side of the skirt. So we're going to take our Dritz Ezy Hem. I am going to fold my fabric at the 1.25 inch mark, and then I am going to press it. Let's go in for a closer look. This is a close-up using the Dritz Ezy Hem, so you can see there is 1.25 inch mark. We are lining it up with that mark. And then we are just going to press to set the fabric in place. And you just kind of move the fabric around so that everything lines up. And be careful that you don't burn yourself because the Dritz Ezy Hem does get hot, and so does your fabric. So that is using it with the Dritz Ezy Hem. If you do not have a Dritz Ezy Hem, you can use a hem gauge, and it's pretty much the same thing. So you just measure the amount that you want for the hem, use a pen, make a mark, and then make sure that you fold your fabric up to that mark. And then you just kind of go down accordingly. And then you press. So this is a heat removing pen, so I'm just going to iron over those marks and make them go away. And then I am going to continue down the length of my skirt with the Dritz Ezy Hem to press in that 1/4 of an inch, and then we'll move on to the next step. Once you get the 1 1/4 inch pressed in using your Dritz Ezy Hem or your handy hem gauge, then the next step is going to be to unfold it where you have already folded. Then you're going to use your Dritz Ezy Hem again, and this time where you're going to be using the 1/4 inch mark on it, and we are going to place it on top of the part that we've already pressed but now unfolded, and then we're going to fold that up 1/4 of an inch. This is a little bit harder because this edge is narrower, and then we're going to press again. So let that cool, and then the point of this is that now that you've got that pressed, we're going to have a nice finished edge along the top, and then we are going to stitch along this top edge. So that is the next step, is to press in that bottom 1/4. And if you do not have a Dritz Ezy Hem, you can adjust your hem gauge accordingly and mark it using your pen. And then go on and, is that the right way? Yeah, there we go, like that. So you're going to fold it up to that line and then press it. So similar sort of thing, just a little faster if you have the Dritz Ezy Hem. And then once we are done pressing it all together, we're going to fold that back up. Because we did a hard set in with the 1/4 inch line, now we're going to have a 1 inch hem basically, but it's got that nice finished edge. So that is the total 1 1/4 inch hem finish. Once you finish pressing in that 1/4 of an inch, we are going to fold up the rest of it. And you can give it one more quick press to make sure that everything is lying nice and smooth and neat. And then the last part of pressing is going to be folding this back in place. And we want to trim this little corner down here to just kind of reduce the bulk a little bit. And that will help things out. So we are just going to refold it along the original lines that we had already folded the beginning on. And so it'll look like that. And then we'll just give it one more quick press. Be careful not to burn your finger. One more quick press before we go and sew it in. So that way everything will stay in place. Give this a nice press, use some steam. There we go. So I'm back at the sewing machine, and before we get started, I'm going to put a couple of pins into that hem so it will just hold everything in place. I'm just putting it in the front edge along the side seam, each side seam, and then on the other edge. That way the hem doesn't move too much while I'm sewing, just in case something gets bunched up. and we will keep everything in line. So that just makes sewing a little bit easier. We are going to be sewing on a straight stitch, so just make sure that you have it at the length you like, and I'm going to be sewing on 2.5. And we are going to be sewing on very close to this edge. So I am putting this end under the sewing machine. I have the bulk of my skirt going off to the left so it can lie on the table and reduce any pull. And we are going to get everything lined up. Let's go in for a closer look. This is a close-up view of where we are going to be stitching. So I have my presser foot all lined up with this top edge. We do want to sew as close as possible to this edge, so I'm going to move my needle over. So I'm going to be sewing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, this top edge here. I am going to get started by rolling my needle down into the fabric, and of course I'm going to backstitch. So just sew a couple of stitches forward. We're going to backstitch and go forward again. So just make sure you keep that edge lined up, and then we are going to be sewing very close to secure the hem in place. And as we're coming to the other end, we are going to pull out that pin so we don't go over it, and we do need to backstitch on this side too. Just don't forget. Go one more forward, backstitch. Oops, didn't press that quite hard enough. There we go. And now we are finished. Raise up your needle, and you can see how we have the seam all finished, and our skirt is now hemmed. Woohoo! The very last step to finish the skirt is going to be putting in a permanent stitch line along this front edge. It's basted, but that's not going to last forever. Once you wash this, it's going to start coming out because it's not a permanent stitch. So if you recall from the instructions, this little flap was folded under 3/8 of an inch. And so if we sew this at 1/4 of an inch, we will catch the flap and be right next to the basting line. So get everything lined up, and let's go in for a closer look. So this is just a close-up view. We are starting with the needle right at the waistband. We do not want to sew through that waistband. We're just going to finish this off underneath. And we are also going to backstitch, so just sew a couple of stitches. And then backstitch. And if you line up this edge with the edge of the presser foot, that will sew 1/4 of an inch, which means we will catch the flap. The edge of the flap's right here. We'll just catch it, but then we won't be sewing on the basting line, so that'll be a lot easier to pull out. If you do end up sewing on the basting line, no worries. It's still pretty easy. It's going to be the looser stitch line. So just continue down the front of this panel, and when you finish, go on and do the other side. Don't forget you got 2 of these to sew. So finish the other one, and then that will be it. Once you finish sewing that permanent stitch line, go back in with some scissors and snip out those basting stitches. And while you're at it, go over your garment and be sure to snip off any loose threads that are just hanging out. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to click like and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a stitch. And if you want more sewing tips and tricks from Sew Lounge, click on the link in the description and get 7 insider sewing tips every beginner needs to know, delivered straight to your inbox. Until we meet again, happy sewing!